we have 5 months until the general election, but who will be our next president? Might it be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Well, one professor believes that he has indeed a foolproof formula to predict the outcome of presidential elections and has outlined it all in a book. You see it here called Predicting the Next President, The Keys to the White House 2016. The author of that book, Allan Lichtman, joins me now from Washington to explain it all. Professor, very much appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Again,
Sure.
You say you've predicted the outcome of every presidential election since 1984. Interestingly, though, your method does not rely on polls, it does not rely on demographics, and does not rely on the almighty analysis of swing states, if you will, but you have 13 keys that you focus upon. So how does it all work?
It's all very simple. There's a real theory behind this. And the theory is presidential elections don't work the way we think they do. They're not decided by the turns of the campaigns, the speeches, the debates, the fundraising. Rather, presidential elections are fundamentally referenda on the performance of the party holding the White House. If that performance is good enough, they get 4 more years. If it's not, they're turned out and the challenging party wins. And the 13 keys are simply ways of gauging mathematically and specifically whether or not that performance will net the party holding the White House. Today, the Democrats, of course, another term in office.
Okay, so then questions as we look ahead to November. But first, how did you come up with your method?
You know, I'd love to say that I came up with this by years of deep contemplation, but to say that, to quote the late, not so great Richard Nixon, that would be wrong. I came across it totally by accident in 1981 when I met a Russian geophysicist, Volodya Kailas-Borak, who said to me, he wants to collaborate with me using the methods of earthquake prediction to predict elections. That may seem far-fetched, but it's actually quite accurate. In earthquakes, they gauge stability or upheaval. The same thing with the 13 keys. We're gauging stability in the White House versus upheaval. And we looked at every election from 1860, the horse and buggy days of politics, to 1980 to come up with the 13 keys, which have now been successful ahead of time in predicting the last 8 presidential elections.
Upheaval is certainly one word to describe the election cycle that we have seen thus far. You have not yet made a decision, in fact, with what might transpire in November. Is this year, is it fair to say, is it harder than most years to predict for you?
The most puzzling year I've ever came across. Look, I predicted the very hard to predict 2012 election in 2010 in print. I predicted 2008 in 2005. But this election is very, very difficult. You have an absolutely unprecedented nominee in Donald Trump. Not even absolutely certain he's going to be the nominee, and we don't know what the outcome of the Democratic contest is going to be. One of my very important keys is a contest within the party holding the White House. Is Bernie Sanders really going to try to provoke a contested convention, or is he going to rally behind Hillary Clinton? We don't know that. The war against ISIS is kind of in the middle. Is that going to be a big foreign policy triumph? Are we going to drive ISIS out of Iraq before the election? Is the president going to be able to sell the Iran nuclear treaty, which he hasn't sold yet, as a big foreign policy triumph? Those are the deep structural questions on which this election is going to turn. And right now, while you may think, Hillary Clinton is going to win, that's uncertain. And her biggest enemy is Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders really wants to stop Donald Trump from being president, like he says, he cannot make this a contested convention.
Well, okay, so we've certainly seen the Vermont senator recede a bit, at least in days and recent weeks here. That said, your 13 keys, though, still, Professor, suggest that there is a metric by which to predict. So this year, because of all the things you just discussed, I mean, those are things everybody knows will have an impact on the election in 5 months' time. When are you comfortable using the metrics that you've put out to, in fact, make a prediction that may fly in the face of conventional wisdom?
My predictions often do fly in the face of conventional wisdom. For example, in 1988, I predicted George H.W. Bush to win when he was 17 points behind in the polls and dead and buried by the pundits. I anticipate making my prediction shortly after the completion of the two conventions and the clarification of some of the factors that I've talked about. I don't look at the polls, I don't look at fundraising, I don't look at the speeches, I don't look at the campaigns. That's froth on the waves of the real trends that decide elections.
So after the two conventions, we'll have you back because we want to hear this prediction, Professor.
Absolutely.
All right. Professor Allan Lichtman of American University, author of Predicting the Next President, The Keys to the White House 2016. We appreciate the time today.
Thanks.